Research work and the dissertations of your work that you have already produced. I have enjoyed reading it as well as learning new insight through it. However, I have a couple of issues that need to be further discussed. The first issue is that I fully understand that in your research work, it didn't start with or it didn't really connect with the issue of spatial dimension. But I see that there are opportunities for you actually to try to connect with some spatial dimension of this, especially when you are dealing with inequality, for instance. How do you foresee any possibilities of relating your research findings into spatial dimension of your research, which might also be related to my second point that is related to how would you generalize your findings, your research findings, within the broader context of Indonesia, since you picked only a couple of case studies, which is always good to do at that kind of research project focusing on that particular regions or areas. But how would you generalize your findings into a broader context of Indonesia? Because we have other major islands in Indonesia like Sumatra, Kalimantan, Sulawesi, and Papua, which might also have different social, economic, and cultural backgrounds. Thank you.
Highly learned compliments. Thank you very much for the compliment on my dissertation. And also thank you very much for your interesting questions regarding the spatial dimensions and also the generalizability of my research for the Indonesian regions. That's true that the spatial dimensions is very related with my contents in my dissertations. My dissertations with the title of Foreign Direct Investment, Inclusive Growth and Institutions in Indonesia aims to analyze what is the contributions of foreign direct investments on inclusive growth, and also want to analyze the role of institutions on the direct foreign direct investment and inclusive growth. So the spatial dimension is very related with the content. That's also related with why I select the districts in Java and Bali and not select the regions in the eastern part of Indonesia. So based on those aims, I select Java and Bali as my case studies because I select those regions based on the data that I available about the foreign direct investment inflows and also the indicators of inclusive growth that I use in this dissertation. Inclusive growth here.
I also want to congratulate you on your thesis that analyzes foreign direct investment and inclusive growth in Indonesia. After the seminal work of Asamoah and Robinson on inclusive growth, there has been a vast amount of publications on the role of institutions, and your research adds to the understanding of that, if I may, too all-encompassing concept by focusing on FDI in specific industries and regions in Indonesia. It is well structured, convincing in its arguments, and it reveals your ability to take the reader by the hand without holding him or her for stupid, and I highly appreciate that. I want to congratulate you on these merits. Yet, I've not only been asked to compliment you, but also to raise critical questions, which I have to do so. Economists often have underestimated, neglected the role of institutions. And as a matter of fact, in mainstream theory of economics, institutions do not play any role at all. Transactions are always perceived as costless since they hold a strictly legal norm to property rights and do not take the act of acquiring, protecting and transferring property rights into account. I do strongly support your starting point that institutions do matter, but I would like to ask you a question about the way you incorporate that into your approach of new institutional economics, as mentioned on page 16 of your book. New institutional economics, as it was coined by Oliver Williams, by the way, an honorary doctorate of this university, first and foremost holds that economic performance is dependent on institutions, since the formal and informal rules of the game constrain interactions. Now, so far we seem to be completely on the same page. Following the often cited definition you give by Dr. Selamat on what institutions are, it's all about lowering transaction costs, or the other side of the coin, by strengthening economic property rights. On the one hand, you go even beyond the point usually the new institutional economics takes. By looking at our regional institutions in Indonesia have attracted those foreign direct investments that created inclusive growth. Institutions matter, they do have an impact on economic performance. That's the static way of looking at it. You can also have a look at it in a dynamic way. And I would like to invite you to share your thoughts on that. Institutions do not just matter. Institutions do change over time. And the question is, how do they change over time? Well, if you look at the North, this answer will be quite simple and stated. There's a stickiness of behavior by slowly changed by lowering these transaction costs or by increasing or better defining property rights. Academic and Robinson would find another way of arguing that institutions will slowly change over time, but there will be resistance from the political elite that is rent-seeking in nature and seems to benefit from this extractive growth. Yet you can have revolutions, and if you look at the book, Why Nations Fail, it's exciting to hear about that, and you would have loved to see why can I not do this kind of research. But I would like to invite you to share your thoughts on this. You're looking not from the static side, but from a dynamic point of view. How have these institutions changed, and do you have an explanation for the change of institutions and the different performance in your case studies? Thank you. I'm looking forward to hearing your answer.
Highly learned opponent. Thank you very much for your compliment on my dissertation. And also thank you very much for your critical questions. You're right that the institutions is dynamic. So in my dissertation, I proposed that in order to have foreign direct investments to contribute positively to inclusive growth, the institution should be inclusive. And you already mentioned that in my dissertation, I adopt the definition of inclusive institutions by Academic Gebouw and Robinson in 2012. In the definitions, Academic Gebouw also mentioned that inclusive institution is they have a value of kinship, they have a value of take care of others. So every time they will try to respect solidarity value. While when the industrializations come, the value of society also switch from solidarity value into individualistic value. But now, because they are very busy with their work and also working in industry, in the factory, they have limited time to have gathering with the society. When we have to work together to clean the environment, for instance, they are feel it will it will limit their time to do the other things. So that's the dynamic of value. In my case study in Bandung district, the THK, Trihita value is not only in society, but also internalized in government. The institutions can be eroded by the individualistic value. But in one hand, if the society and all stakeholders in institutions can maintain the value of inclusiveness, so it...
Esteemed PhD candidate, let me join my colleagues with the congratulations on a thesis that really does speak for itself and puts probably many qualitative researchers to shame with more than 80 interviews. A very impressive amount, and I think also enhanced the quality of the thesis. Let me probe your knowledge further on values. Let me quote from your thesis. Adat village is a village which is based on religious and cultural values, and it is regulated by community rule, the so-called awik-awik. Adat village deposits the funds in traditional financial institutions owned by the village people, known as LPD. The LPD manage the funds to finance the community's religious activities and provide loans for community empowerment and scholarships for students. These can already be seen as positive values or positive examples of religious and cultural values support foreign direct investment, and you did also mention the berpertahankan value as one such. Let me ask you then, what is concretely the role of cultural and religious values regarding the influence on whether or not such institutions do already exist that help to funnel direct foreign investment into the appropriate channels? As a first question. As a second question, would other community structures such as Coton Leon also qualify as such a value-based institution, and if so, how? And as a last sub-question, which cultural values would be beneficial and which cultural and religious values might exert negative effects on inclusive growth with regards to foreign direct investment?
Please, brief answers to all three questions.
Critical questions related to the awik-awik and about the cultures, how they can contribute positively to foreign investment to inclusive growth, and how other values in society like gotong royong can improve and how is it work, and the cultural values that can be positive and negative impact on direct and foreign investment to inclusive growth. So, as I already mentioned before, that in my dissertations, we propose that institution is very important to shape the direction of foreign investment to inclusive growth. And I also mentioned human and environments support the inclusive growth can be achieved by having foreign investment. Based on my in-depth interview with the international hotels in Nusa Dua area, they mentioned that they also internalize the value of society. So the Trihita is not only the value that embedded in the society, but also internalized in their business activity. Previously, all people only say that, okay, private sector only concerned about economic problem. But here in the...
Let me join others by congratulating you on your work, but also thank you for contributing to our understanding of inclusive governance towards inclusive growth in Indonesia. In the final part of your dissertation, you make a number of policy recommendations to stakeholders in Indonesia, including government, policymakers, foreign investors and others, in order to promote the positive impact of FDI in society. In policy recommendation 4, you recommend district governments to involve society when formulating investment plans. You mentioned the example of how a local community tradition you have already reflected on contributes to inclusive growth. You examine the role of local values regarding inclusive growth. And in policy recommendation 6, you recommend that local people should be directly involved. So your focus emphasizes the importance of localities, local traditions, local communities, local people, localized in 3 regions inside Indonesia. I wonder, how can these be applied outside the regions of your study in a more generic way? If only because you suggest in your dissertation that you use theory and economic concepts which are more of an international applicability. So, for instance, having worked in Mongolia before joining this university, a country with probably the highest FDI per capita, until recently the fastest growing economy in the world, yet characterized by tremendous inequality and with a very large population, proportion of the population living below poverty standards. Certainly, the principles you describe could be valuable to attain inclusive growth in a country like Mongolia and outside the region of your study. So my question is, and I realize this connects also to the question of Professor Ibisono, how your research could benefit inclusive governance outside the region. Would we need to identify a Mongolian variety of Trilita Karana in order to come to inclusive growth? Can your policy recommendations work outside Indonesia? Or is the model so regionalized that it only can work inside Indonesia?
Highly learned opponent, thank you very much for your compliment on my dissertation. You asked about the general ability of my research to be implemented in other countries such as Mongolia. As I mentioned before, and also that inclusive institutions is important for the countries which has high influence of FDI to per capita. So Mongolia is one country that also have high influence of FDI. So in order to have also in the society, in order to have inclusive institutions, one of the ways is to have the coordination among governments itself. For instance, in Indonesia, and maybe also in Mongolia, the government is not only a national government, but there's a layer and government institutions in governments is represented by the involvement of the districts governments in order to make public policy process in planning, implementing, and controlling. So if the district's governments involve, for instance, in a planning for foreign direct investment, so the foreign direct governments, but I also extend that the institution is not only in government, but also institutions in society and the private sector. For the society, if the society also have the value of inclusiveness that they inspire to others, and I believe that Mongolia also have that kind of value, because I know from your story that Mongolia has a very diverse also, so they have their kind of value, their own characteristics. So when the Mongolia have the value of inclusiveness, or the other way, for instance, in my case in Badung districts, the governments also regulate to have a value. The governments also regulate the foreign companies and society to coordinate to each other. For instance, in Badung districts, in order to support the coordination.
Esteemed candidates, I'd like to join the choir of compliments about the comprehensive study that you have delivered here, and it's really impressive. But let me turn, we go out of time immediately to the critical questions that we are invited to raise here. Reading your chapter 4 on the government regulations in managing FDI for inclusive growth in Indonesia, I wonder in which way the Indonesian government and its institutions are using the term inclusive growth. In chapters 2 and 3, you are explaining how you are using this concept. And it's nicely summarized in one of your propositions, and you already mentioned it in your first answer, proposition 3. Can I ask one of the parents to read that out to the audience?
Okay. Proposition number 3, inclusive growth is growth which benefits all members of society and leads to less poverty and inequality.
It sounds great, doesn't it? Politically, this is the program of a socialist party, or perhaps even a communist party. Economic growth to the benefit of all people, ending poverty and inequality, creating equity, livability, and hopefully on a sustainable basis. In the meantime, we know that FDI depends on investors, and investors essentially want to make money. This is capitalism at its best. Some even call it organized greed. So, how do governmental institutions match the greedy incentives of investors with the noble socialist ideals of sharing? And do they, in this context, use the term inclusive growth, A, in an analytical way as you do? And if so, how? Or do they mainly use it for rhetorics to serve a standard agenda trying to increase the gross national product? I'm looking forward to your answer.
I didn't open it. Thank you very much for the compliments on my dissertation and also for the challenging questions. Your question is about the inclusive growth concept adopted by Indonesian governments in the national medium term, for instance. So in the chapter 4, I explored the capacity of the plans and regulations of the Indonesian governments in order to direct foreign investments to inclusive growth. I observed through the 4 plans and regulations, investment law number 24/2007, and then national medium-term development plans in 2014-2019, and then the negative investment list and general investment plan. From those plans and regulations, investment law, that the investment should provide employment creation, for instance, and also have to provide corporate social responsibility programs, and also have to have linkage to micro, small, medium enterprise, and have programs to improve the productivity of labor. It's also already mentioned in investment law, but they didn't call it inclusive growth. While in the medium-term national development plan, there's a term of inclusive growth, but they didn't mention clearly what is the channel for having inclusive growth, especially for the investment. So that's why in the chapter 4, I found that the regulation and the capacity of national plans and regulation still weak in order to direct foreign investment to inclusive growth. They should be clearly indicate that kind of channel, because in this, even they already give facilitation for investor to come to Indonesia, but because of the no coherency and also lack of coordinations among ministry and lack of coordinations between governments, national and local governments, so it's only the inclusive growth is only like in the national level. It cannot be improved by having those channels, and cannot be improved and supported by the local governments. And interestingly, when I did my in-depth interview, one of the local governments even didn't know what is inclusive growth. They didn't know what is the inclusive growth term. So that's why national government has to socialize the inclusive growth terms. First, they have to indicate what kind of channels that can contribute more to inclusive growth, and then they have to socialize and make the regulation. And also,
Thank you, Madam Director. Yes, I also know that it might not be part of your research, but I would like to see if you have already considered that what would be the most significant implication as well as challenges of your findings into the planning processes in Indonesia, especially, again, I'm trying to relate with the regional planning process, and how do you see the implications that into the planning process in Indonesia, not only now, probably, if you can also foresee within the next decade, for instance. Thank you.
highly learned components. Thank you very much for your questions. Related with your questions about what is the...
Ora finita.
I think you have to give this answer at another occasion. Your College of Deans will withdraw for some time to consider